Test. Presenting first is Noah Regnan Farrell with how does...
Avid hockey watcher.
Okay.
All right, here we go. My presentation is about how does language evolve over time.
Okay.
All right, so to first understand what we're talking about, it's important to understand what language actually means. Collins' dictionary definition of language is a system of communication which consists of a set of sounds or written symbols which are used by people of a particular country or region for talking or writing.
Okay.
From this definition, we can understand that language is not limited to only the use of words, but also can include mathematical language and, of course, sign language. I don't know what's going on back there. But why is language important? Well, firstly, language has a huge influence in our culture. For instance, in the Western world, which includes North America and Western Europe, we are much more inclined to use direct words, such as yes and no, while in more Asian countries, the tendency is to use more indirect words, such as perhaps or maybe. From this, it can be understood that language has a large impact on the way we interact with people, which is very important. So here's a little infographic showing how different cultures in one given country has a different word for the same thing. So it's clear that they're chunked in certain sections and it's just not completely random. So this lines up with Manitoba. We usually call it pop. Yeah. Makes sense. Next slide there. Also, an extremely important skill to have is the ability to utilize language to get what you want. For example, if you're trying to persuade a group of people into agreeing to build a multi-million-dollar stadium, if the owner of this team is highly disliked, you should know you don't want to mention that name in your presentation, because then there's going to be a negative connotation between your, presentation to get the stadium built and the name of that owner. I don't know if that makes any sense, but
No.
what are you switching the slide for, buddy?
You said you pretty much finished.
No. All the best politicians and entrepreneurs know how important the skill is to use language effectively. Yeah, you can move on. So finally, probably the biggest reason why language is so important is that how we think is partially based in our own language. Language can be considered a filter or a framer of perception and thought. This means that language gives us the ability to perceive the world, or to think about the world and focus our perception and thought on specific aspects of the world, where without language this would be near impossible to do. This provides a reason for why people of many different cultures have vastly different outlooks on the world. Okay. Here's a video showing an example of the dramatic effect language can have on perception.
Several cultures in the world, including the ancient Greeks, that did not have a word for the color blue. In fact, blue as a separate color in the English language is a relatively recent color. So the Himba tribe in Namibia are one of those cultures where in their language there's no color blue. So for them, blue, as with the ancient Greeks, blue is a variant of green. So when they're shown colors with green and different greens and blue, they find it hard to distinguish between the greens and the blues. Interestingly, when people from England, for example, were shown the same color wheel, they were easily able to distinguish the blue, but then they were shown a version that was given to the Himba people, which had one color, a slightly different shade of green. The Himba people were easily able to discern that, but the English volunteers were not able to distinguish that. So what that suggests is that our perception of color is not only related to the colors we see, but to the words that we give colors. In our language, we have a distinction between light red and dark red. We call light red pink in English. But in Russian, there's two different colors for light blue and dark blue. Now we don't have that. We just call them all blue. And so we would find Russian people might find it easier to distinguish between lighter and darker blues than we would, because they're separate colors. Just as we would find it very easy to distinguish between pink and red.
Interesting stuff there. I hope you like that, Carl.
That could have been better.
Wow. Okay, so next slide there, Evan.
Uh-oh.
You're not on the presentation.
No, back, full screen. Oh, now you're
I'm
on.
trying.
Okay. So based on that video, we can understand that languages can be drastically different, which means, like anything, they must have evolved from some kind of common ancestor. The most easily understood theory of the beginning of language is due to the increased chance of survival it provides to a species that uses it. For example, when humans needed to hunt, the ability to communicate with one another was going to allow the job to be much easier, therefore allowing for more food to be caught and the rate of reproduction would be significantly increased. This is the basis for the theory of natural selection, where if something provides increased chance of survival, it will continue into future generations, which is the same case for the development of language, which happened sometime 30 to 100 million years ago. I mean, 30 to 100,000 years ago. 100,000 years ago. Not 30 to 100 million years ago. That'd be way too much. Yeah, it's not that much.
Thank you, Adrian. That is a long time ago.
So the fact that all language came from one original source helps to explain why some parts of language, such as a point or a smile resembling happiness, remains constant in all cultures. It's the longest slide here. So if certain parts of languages are universal, why would it ever have to change from culture to culture? The first reason is just like why genetics change, which is due to randomness. If two tribes, say, are separated and an individual creates a new sound to communicate an idea, it's likely that that same idea would have a different sound from another culture. That would explain why identical ideas would become completely different sounding words that would continue to be altered as more and more cultures arise over time. Another reason that languages change over time is the requirement for new words. As technology continues to advance, we will always need new words that were not necessary before. For example, before computers were a thing, you never need a word for a download or a software update. But now, as technology begins to keep going and going, we'll always need to invent new words to explain those things that are happening. The final reason why language changes is the adaptation that occurs between many different languages. As cultures interact, words are bound to be borrowed and altered, which is what happened a long time ago when English, for instance, was developed. If being able to use a new word improves the lifestyle of a group of people, it is likely to enter the general dialect. So yeah, that's a chart right there breaking down the roots of all English language. And as you can see, pretty much none of it is original, and it's all taken from other cultures. And it also helps to explain why some words are so close to one another across many different cultures. And one example of this is the word coffee. As you can see, almost all the adaptations of the word have like some kind of hard cuss sound at the start, and then a lighter vowel sound, the E at the end. E or cafe, I guess some of those are right.
Cafe.
Yeah. So my theory of why this would happen is that coffee is something that not all cultures would have access to. So like if one culture discovered it and passed it on to a different culture, they probably just used the same word for it that was given to them. Okay, next slide. So will language ever stop changing? The answer is no, and it is primarily due to the constant creation of new words that are being invented a lot of the time on the internet. I think KVAT understands this, as he is usually confused when someone mentions one of these new words to him. I don't know. Do you have any examples of this, Carl?
What?
Oh, okay.
Wait, what was
So
that?
this is a TED Ed video. It's 4 minutes long, so I don't think KVAT will bother watching this, so we can just skip it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to watch it.
I want to watch it.
I want to watch it.
So in conclusion, language is always changing. It's never static, and most likely never will be, at least for the foreseeable future.